Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Team Two's presentation of our end of class PowerPoint. Speaking for the team, I know we truly enjoyed production operations and logistics management and look forward to taking more classes with you all. The following slides will be a framework covering the most important topics discussed in each of the chapters. Sit back and enjoy the presentation. We start our operations journey with Chapter 1, which was an overview of operations and supply chain. Operations and supply chain management is responsible for the creation and delivery of brands, products, and services. Supply chain includes everything from raw materials to the final product the customer receives, and everything in between. Production operations historically is primarily focused on turning inputs, such as labor and materials, into finished goods, also known as outputs. Strong supply chain management is the key to success in any organization. Next, we look at the strategy behind good operations management. Operational strategy is the guideline or action plan by which a company runs its day to day procedures to push its overall agenda or goals. Think of it like a football team. Operational strategy is the playbook given down by the coach to the players. When everyone understands and has buy in to the operational strategy, a company runs on optimum efficiency. After a company has their operations strategy in place and is organized, the next step is deciding what products are worth making and will make them money. It is through three main phases. First, the development phase, where they find the concept of the product. This is done through roundtables, brainstorming sessions, as well as market research and customer feedback. Next, they do the actual product design, such as the materials and specs of the final product. Finally, they do test runs or pilot programs before putting it into full commercial production. This allows them to do a QA or quality assurance process to make sure the product is safe for the public and solves the problem they designed the product to do. Once a company's product has passed the pilot stage, the next question the informed operations manager needs to answer is how the product should move through production. Different products need different designed flows depending on the volume, variety, and variation. For example, if a company is making one of a kind furniture, they will have a very different style than a mass produced facility making furniture overseas. It's important to match the correct product flow to the demand of the product so you don't over or under produce. The next task for the operations manager is to determine the core product design of an organization. They must decide if they are a customer focused service organization or a manufacturing focused organization that focuses on large scale mass production of goods. Truthfully, most companies are a bit of both, but understanding your core value prop is necessary for any company to succeed. The main thing to consider when deciding between the two is, are you a goods, also known as physical product manufacturer, or are you offering a service like healthcare or a cleaning service? Okay, so now that we have sat down and determined if we are selling a physical product or service, what's next? Now we must map out the process step by step. One method to do that is using a flowchart, which is a visual representation of a process showing the sequential order. In the example above, we see an order moving through the supply chain process at a manufacturing company, from customer request to final delivery. Flowcharts are a great tool for making the operational progress easy to follow and identify spots that could cause delays in production. Now that we have the operation all mapped out and organized, let's decide what type of supplier relationship works best to support our organization. Lean suppliers focus on efficiency, quality, and long-term partnerships. Meanwhile, a traditional provider focuses on giving companies competitive pricing on large bulk standardized orders. The lean approach offers flexibility and is normally more of a true partnership. Meanwhile, a traditional supplier is generally more of an outside vendor but has unbeatable cost savings for the organization. Both have value depending on the scope and need of the business. Now we have our suppliers and process aligned, we need to find a way to measure the quality of those suppliers. One of the gold standards of quality management is the ISO 9000, which gives the operations manager a global set of standards to measure themselves against. This helps with continuous improvement initiatives by providing the baseline that one strives to surpass. It connects the company back to the bigger goal of operations management, which is continuous improvement and meeting customer expectations. Going hand in hand with our last slide is another method that can be used for quality standard management. Six Sigma is a data/analytical based approach to managing an organization. It uses data to find problems, identify and reduce errors, and make the operational consistently good. When you combine it with the concept of, say, a lean organization, you create a smooth running operation with little waste, high quality, and most importantly, happy customers. Now that the quality and manufacturing are handled, we need to ask ourselves the important question: what's next? What will my customers need from me next? That is where forecasting comes to play. When forecasting, the first step is to look at internal demand patterns, also known as what does my customer want to buy? First, ask yourself the demand questions. What is the average level of demand? Is it trending up or down? Does it have seasonal demand or cyclical cycles? You must really understand what's going on with the data to pick the right forecasting method. This could be methods such as advanced time series, adaptive smoothing, or casual models like regression that use outside factors to predict demand. After choosing a method, you calculate the forecast either by hand or using software like Excel or SAP. It is important to check how accurate your forecast is by looking at the error measures like MAD and tracking signals so that you can spot any bias or unusual data. Next, fine-tune your method by adjusting things like the smoothing factor to get better results. Using big data and working closely with suppliers or customers can also help improve forecasts. Now that we have forecasted demand, we have to turn those numbers into an actual plan for the company. First, we will evaluate costs. Above is the example of some of the sample costs an organization might face. For example, you might face the cost of hiring and firing employees, overtime, excess inventory, the cost of subcontracting to a third party, and the risk of a stockout or back order if production is not managed directly. These leads to lost orders and lost customers. These represent both opportunity costs and direct costs an organization might have to face. Now that we have our production plan, our suppliers, and our costs, we must plan the schedule of when we can finally make product delivery. When designing a scheduling system, start by setting delivery dates that match your availability and customer needs. Next, identify any bottlenecks or parts of the process that could slow you down and work to fix them. Then, plan when each job should start using simple structuring rules. It's important to keep an eye on progress and make changes if things fall behind. I recommend using planning tools or software to stay organized and keep track of the daily schedule process. Now that we have set the schedule and have the bottlenecks identified, we must outline those bottlenecks as part of the critical path. The critical path is the longest chain of tasks that determines if a product will finish on time. Tasks on this path have little to no slack, so delays might delay the whole project. By mapping this information visually, it allows managers to watch critical tasks closely and add slack or more resources to a task if it is running behind. More resources could be anything from additional human capital or a new machine on a critical component. Now that we have everything running smoothly to our customers and we have started production, we have a new problem: inventory. One of the options for managing it is vendor managed inventory, or VMI. It is when a third party manages the inventory for us versus us storing it directly in our own warehouse. This helps reduce upfront costs and scale faster. Additionally, if we can determine what inventory we should hold using systems like the ABC system, we can find additional cost savings. The ABC system is a way to organize inventory based on the throughput of the item or the rate at which it sells. It categorizes them A, B, or C based on this throughput and the revenue they generate. Now that we have inventory sorted, we need a way to organize the raw materials used for actual production. One way we can do this is with an MRP system. An MRP is a tool that helps plan and control the materials needed to make products. First, you start with a master schedule, which lays out what and when to produce. Then, you use a bill of materials to list all the parts each product needs, and check inventory records to see what's already on hand or on order. From this information, the system creates purchase orders for suppliers and shop orders for production. This ensures materials show up on time, helping the whole process run smoothly and avoiding excess inventory. Now that materials and production are done, it's time to measure the overall supply chain. Supply chains are measured by metrics such as speed, cash flow, costs, and environmental impact. There are some inherent risks such as supplier challenges, demand shifts, and the complexity inherent in a long supply chain. To counter this, you must build the resilience into your supply chain. Resilience will help you adapt quickly from disruptions as well as proactively detect them. To do this, you need to constantly monitor your supply chain, scorecard suppliers to find weak points, maintain safety stock, and have clear plans as to when changes happen. This will help keep operations running smoothly despite potential challenges. On our last slide, we talked briefly about supplier challenges. Let's look more specifically into that point. One way in which you can work with outside suppliers is via outsourcing and offshoring. And while there are some clear benefits, there are some clear risks as well that we need to discuss. On the positive side, they let companies use outside experts and save money. They give them access to bigger suppliers and cheaper labor. This allows your business to focus on what it does best, selling your product. But there are risks created by this as well, such as production delays, quality loss, or loss of tribal knowledge. Additionally, you have challenges like longer shipping times, language or cultural differences, and more complex supply chain management. So it's important to carefully evaluate the pros and cons before deciding what is best for your organization. Finally, outsourcing and offshoring naturally lead you to the realm of global logistics. Global logistics is the concept that companies make more money by buying and selling product around the world. It is not all positive and comes with similar downsides to outsourcing, like longer delivery times, delays at borders, tariffs, and generally adds complexity to the supply chain. In order to compete in the modern world, most companies have no choice but to source or sell from key markets like China, since both the opportunity to sell and buy from that market is a key competitive point for an organization. This is where the rubber meets the road for the seasoned supply chain manager, as this is one of the most complicated and complex parts of the modern supply chain. Well, guys, thank you for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed Team Two's presentation. Wave goodbye to the truck on your way out. Thanks again.